In this presentation, we'll be looking at how to identify the butterflies of central Scotland. I'll mostly be focusing upon the common and widespread species, but we'll also have a look at some of those rare species too. There are 35 different species of butterfly in Scotland, and today we'll look at a selection of some of those. And when you're identifying any insect, it's important to know what you need to look for. So with butterfly ID, I think of the clues as being the ground colour of the butterfly, whether it has any spots. The wing tips and borders are very important for separating the white species of butterflies. Then whether it has any bands, the behaviour and the time of year are all useful clues. So we'll look at each of those in turn now. So starting off with the ground colour, there's several white butterflies. There's a single common and widespread blue butterfly called the common blue. There are other blue butterflies as well though, and we'll talk about those later in the presentation. Then there's a mostly red one, this is the peacock. Then there's several orange butterflies. There is some which are brown or very dark brown, which look almost black as well. And there's a single green species of butterfly in Scotland called the green hairstreak. So when we're looking at spots, you might notice that some butterflies have little speckles on the wings, just like the small copper here, whereas others have really striking eye spots. If you see a red butterfly with striking eye spots like this, you know immediately that it's the peacock butterfly because no other butterfly looks like this in the UK. Then the wing edges are really important for the white species of butterfly. This includes the large white, small white, green veined white and orange tip females in Scotland. Orange tip males have orange tips to the wings, but females don't have that feature. I'll talk about each of these species in turn and show you how to separate them from the closely related ones. So most of our butterflies in Scotland don't have any striking bands, except the red admiral. It's a very dark black butterfly with red bands on the upper wings, and it's very easy to identify that because it's so distinctive. Others have short bands on the wings, such as this small tortoiseshell here. Then with the behaviour, some will rest with their wings opened or closed, and this is important to remember when you're looking at the guides. For example, green hairstreaks and small heath always rest with their wings closed, so as soon as these butterflies land, they will close their wings shut and you won't ever see the upper surface. So when you're looking at a guide for these species, you're looking at the undersides of the wings. The time of year can be important too, and this is because some general guidelines work for much of the time. For example, if you see a butterfly in early May or June, it could be an orange tip female, or it could also be a small white, and both of those are very similar species. However, the orange tip only flies once per year in Scotland, and that's in early summer, whereas the small white can fly later in the year because it has 2 generations per year. So if you see a white butterfly in late summer, it's extremely unlikely to be an orange tip. And you can refer to local guides. This is important because Scotland is different. So if you get a guide for butterflies in the UK, you might find that Scottish species fly 2 or even 3 weeks later than those in southern England. Other things you can look out for are things like wing venation. So on the undersides of some species, this is the green faint white butterfly. On the underside, you can see that it's got these streaky veins and it separates it quite easily from the other white butterflies. The shape of the wing can be important for some species too, and also the size. For example, we'll say things like large white or small white butterflies, and generally large whites are larger than small whites, but there are some small large whites and some large small whites, so it's important to keep that in mind. And I'll introduce you to some of the species groups in turn. So again, the white butterflies all look mostly white, and they feed on almost exclusively upon brassica plants. Those can be wild or cultivated ones. The next species group is the browns, and this includes the small heath, the ringlet, and the meadow brown, and the speckled wood. The larvae of these butterflies all feed upon grasses. These are just 4 of the brown butterfly species in Scotland. There are some other species which are much less common than these ones. Our next species group is the Lycaenidae, and Lycaenidae actually means it's the Greek for she-wolf. Nobody knows where this name came from, but it includes the hairstreaks, the blues, and the small copper. The larvae of these butterflies all feed upon a variety of different types of plant. These butterflies are usually small or medium sized, often with very brightly coloured wings. The final group then includes some of those species which you're very likely to see in gardens. These are some of the biggest, most blousy, show-off butterflies with very bright colours. So it includes small tortoiseshell, the comma, red admiral, painted lady and peacock, and the larvae of these all feed upon nettles or thistles in Scotland. So now we're on to the species account, and I'll talk about each species of butterfly in turn. There's no need to remember these all, because if you have a guide with you, you can use these hints and tips to separate these butterflies in the field. So we'll start with the whites. If you look at the small white then, this species has 2 generations per year in Scotland, and often the second generation is darker than the one in the photograph here. So in springtime they'll look like this. Now for separating the small white from the other similar species, you're looking at the dark tips to the wings. If you look here, the dark tip to the wing actually only extends really towards the head of the butterfly and not down the other edge of the wing. It's like an acute angled triangle pointing towards the head of the butterfly. The spots tend not to be very strong, and it's also got yellow underneath. This species is most often found in gardens and allotments because it is one of those species which was regarded as one of the cabbage whites. So this is one of those which can lay its eggs upon cabbages and kale and broccoli and other species of cultivated brassicas. And you can just see here the beautiful yellow of the underside of the wing of the small white. Coming on to the large white then, this also has 2 generations per year, but we also get many migrants coming in from southern parts too. The second generation is also more darkly marked, and this is a female in the photograph here. And if you look at the black tips to the wings, you can see that they actually extend in both directions along the wing edge, both towards the butterfly's head and down the other edge of the wing. If you need help to remember this, you can remember that it looks like an L shape, so L for large helps you to separate it from the small white butterfly. The spots tend to be quite strong, but males and females are slightly different because there are no spots on the upper wings in males. And this is a photograph of a male here. This is another species which is most often found in gardens and allotments, again because the caterpillars feed upon cabbage and broccoli and other cultivated plants. Like the small white, this butterfly has yellow on the underside too. Coming on to the green faint white then, this would be most similar to the small white. If you look at the upper surface of the wing, you'll see it has these dark, very fine thread-like veins on the upper surface, but also the wing tips are actually broken at each section. You can see it's got white markings in between each of the black markings here, so it's broken all along. But they're very distinctive on the undersides. They have these grey veins on the undersides of the wings. Those wings can actually look yellow or sometimes green or just pale grey on the underside. As with the previous 2 species, the green faint white has 2 generations per year, so you can see it in early summer and spring, and then in late summer too. This is mostly absent from gardens though, unless you've got some more natural areas. It's mostly found in natural habitats like woodland edges and riverbanks, and other places which are slightly sheltered. Its caterpillars feed mostly upon wildflowers, which are in the brassica family, instead of those cultivated brassicas like the small and large white. With the orange tips then, the males are very distinctive because they're beautiful white butterflies with orange tips to the wings, and they're very distinctive in early spring. However, the females have no orange on their wings at all, but both sexes do have a mottled green on the underside of the wing. This marbling effect is unique to the orange tip, so it will help you to separate female orange tips from those other white butterfly species. It's got a single brood which peaks mostly in May in Scotland and on into June, but you don't really see them much longer than that. Now we're on to the browns, and the first one we'll start with is the ringlet. This butterfly is quite distinctive. It's quite dark in flight, especially when they first emerge. They look almost black because they're a very dark brown in appearance. They do have some little dots on the upper surface of the wing, but they might not be distinctive, especially in fresh butterflies. And the butterfly, as it gets older, can fade to a lighter brown appearance. So the spots can be harder to see on the upper surface, but they're very clear on the underside. So if you look at it here, And this is how the ringlet gets its name, because it's got these beautiful golden rings and you can actually see these as they fly. This has got a single brood per year in Scotland and it peaks mostly in June. And this butterfly is most likely to be found in wet grassland habitats, places with long, lush grass, especially sheltered places on the sides of woods or places which aren't that exposed. Coming on to the meadow brown then, in flight these can be mistaken for faded ringlets because it has a lighter brown appearance overall. They do have more orange underneath, so the ringlet doesn't have any orange, so this is one of the ways you can separate them. It's got a single dark eye spot with a white dot in the centre, but if you look at the upper surface you'll see that it's a lighter brown in appearance overall with these black dots too. Sometimes they have these orange marks, but those aren't always that visible, so you can't rely on those. Really the most distinctive thing about this, the way to separate this from the ringlet, is to look on the underside, because the meadow brown doesn't have those rings like the ringlet does. The meadow brown is also slightly larger. It also flies later too, so it can be found from June until August. And it's mostly found in areas with long grass, but in full sun. So these can be in the same habitats as ringlets, but they prefer drier, more exposed grasslands. Then on to the small heath. This is one of our smallest brown butterfly species. It's about half the size of a meadow brown. They look quite orange in flight, and if you look at the orange of the underside of the wing here, that is the same colour which is present on the entire upper surface of the butterfly. So as they fly along, they look like small orange butterflies flying through short grassland, but whenever they land, they can be harder to see. This is because they close their wings immediately, and initially you can see the orange of one of the wings, but that is soon hidden and they look quite grey like this. The heath name is confusing though, because this butterfly can be found in lots of grassy places with short grass from May until September, so it's got a longer flight season than the other brown species we've dealt with so far. Then the speckled wood is a species which is increasing in Scotland. It's mostly found in woodland rides and glades, but also hedgerows and gardens are good habitats for this butterfly too. Anywhere where you've got some trees with some grass underneath, you might expect to see the speckled wood. Again, this can be found almost all summer because there are at least 2 broods in Scotland, and the males generally take a prominent perch and they'll defend territories, so they're very easy to see because as soon as any insects come into those territories, the speckled wood will chase after them. It's a very distinctive butterfly by having this dark brown appearance on the upper sides of the wings with cream or white speckles. However, this species is missing from much of central Scotland, but is spreading every year. As far as we know, it's still absent from Glasgow, but it has recently moved into Edinburgh and is moving beyond there very quickly. Now we're on to the Lycaenidae. So we'll start with the common blue. The males of this species are very conspicuous. They fly a lot more than the females and they're very brightly coloured. And they're our only common widespread blue butterfly. The wings are finely edged with black and white, just like this. This can help you to separate them from the holly blue butterfly, where the wings have more black towards the edges of the wings. The females are more variable though. They're usually brown with a hint of blue, but they can also have these orange patches as well. However, some females are much bluer in appearance than the one in the photograph here. The common blue usually flies from June until September, and they're found usually in short grasslands and coasts. The caterpillar plant for this butterfly is bird's foot trefoil and greater bird's foot trefoil, and both of those plants, especially bird's foot trefoil, is found in short grassland. So the small copper then, so the males of this species are regarded as being quarrelsome, and they will also chase anything within their territory, and it means that you usually only find them in 1s or 2s, but never very large numbers. They can be hard to see because they are quite a small butterfly. So the underside of the wing looks just like this, so it's not very bright in appearance. However, when the wings are opened, especially on a sunny day, you can see that they're a beautiful bright orange colour which really shines in the sun. It's got a very distinctive upper wing, and you'll often see them basking in the sunshine on sunny hillsides from late May until early October in Scotland. This is another species with 2 generations per year. So they're mostly found in short grasslands or even disturbed ground with rocks to bask upon. And this really is a species which can be found in places like disused quarries or old building sites, places where there's enough rock for them to bask upon and to heat up. Now we're onto the green hairstreak, which is the UK's only green butterfly species. However, there are several green moth species. This is quite a small butterfly, and the wings are green underneath but brown on top. So whenever they fly, you will see the brown mixing with green as they fly, and it looks kind of a silvery appearance as they fly. But whenever they land, they sit with their wings closed, so it has this bright green appearance. It can be quite hard to see them though in their habitat, because sometimes they'll land upon birch twigs and they look just like a birch leaf as they sit there. They're usually only found in places with bilberry. This is its main larval food plant in Scotland. However, in other parts of the UK, this species will feed upon a wide variety of plants, including gorse and bramble, so it can be found in other habitats. However, in Scotland though, it is mostly just found at the edges of peat bogs, where the bilberry grows. So now we're on to the vanessids, and we'll start with the small tortoiseshell. It's one of our most common species in gardens and parks, and it can be seen in any month because they overwinter as adults, and sometimes you will, on a warm winter day, you can see these emerging from hibernation. They've got distinctive appearance because they have many colours on the wings, and this is how I remember them, because they're similar to a tortoiseshell cat, which is a mix of many different colours in it. So it's got orange, black, white, blue, and this is a really distinctive butterfly for this reason. It's also got black and yellow stripes on the upper edge of the wing, with a fringe of blue around the sides, but they're very well camouflaged underneath. And this is because this butterfly in nature would be spending the winter in the hollows of trees or in caves, so being dark like this could help it to hide from predators. Another fairly common species is the peacock butterfly. Again, these are common in gardens and parks, and if you've got something like a buddleia bush or sedums in the garden, you're very likely to see these butterflies come in. Again, like the small tortoiseshell, they will overwinter as adults, and the distinctive thing about the peacock is that it's mostly red with these striking eye spots on the upper surfaces of the wings. Like the small tortoiseshell, they're very well camouflaged, so if they were in nature in a cave, for example, it would be very easy for them to hide from predators. Now we're on to the comet, and the comet is a fairly new arrival in Scotland, but it seems to be doing pretty well here now. It's spreading throughout much of the country. So it's distinctive by having a unique ragged outline to the wings, and the upper surfaces of the wings have this burnt orange appearance with black or brown speckles. You can see that ragged appearance from the side here, but it also has a white C shape under the wing, which is what gives the comet its name because it looks like a comma. You can see it again in this photograph here, both the ragged appearance and the white C shape. This butterfly is often found at the edges of woodland where it really likes that shelter where it can warm up. So painted ladies are a migrant species, and this one comes from southern Europe and Africa every year to the UK in varying numbers. We get what are called painted lady years. Some years we get tens of millions of them, and other years we get very little. It often depends upon the weather in Africa and Europe. So on the upper surface they have a salmon pink or orange appearance with dark patches towards the edges of the wingtips with white spots in them. The underside is a pale brown appearance and they have eye spots. Unlike the other vanessids, this has a brightly coloured underside of the wing, and this is because it isn't spending the winter in the UK, so it wouldn't have to be dark to hibernate here. Our final species then is one of those that you can see mostly in late summer. It's the red admiral, and these are mostly migrants. They can breed in Scotland, but they rarely survive our winter. So you might get some of them coming in early spring or early summer. Those will lay their eggs. Those caterpillars will survive through the summer, and then you'll see those adults emerging in late summer, and they will fly back down south for the winter. So it's very distinctive by being large, very dark in flight, so they're very striking, and they've got these red bands on the upper surfaces of the wings. But even if you only see the undersurface of the wing, you can see that it's dark with a salmon pink band going across the wing, and they tend to be seen in greatest numbers in late summer in Scotland. And you can see what it looks like underneath here with that band running across the wings. Now, so far we've dealt with the most common and widespread species of butterfly in central Scotland, but there are a few others I'd like you to keep your eye out for. We'll start with the small skipper. This is a beautiful, small, golden coloured butterfly with an arrowhead shape to the body. These can be found mostly in areas of tall grass because the females lay their eggs on these tall grasses. It can be found mostly along the east coast and in the borders of Scotland. And even if you're in Edinburgh, you can actually see it at Holyrood Park. Another species you can also see in Holyrood is the grayling. And the grayling is mostly coastal in Scotland, but again in Edinburgh you can see it at Holyrood Park and Calton Hill. It really likes rocky areas, so you can find it in disused quarries or along the coasts in sand dunes. But in Holyrood Park it's in areas where the rocks are exposed. This butterfly is very well camouflaged against rocks, and as soon as it closes its wings it can be very hard to see. But it is quite a large butterfly and easy to see in flight. Two of the blue butterflies you might look out for. So we'll start with the small blue, which is the UK's smallest butterfly species. It's fairly rare in Scotland and again mostly found in coastal sites, although there are a few inland sites. You can find it in the Borders and in Angus and in the Moray coast, but has also been reintroduced to the west coast at Irvine. It's a very, very dark blue butterfly in appearance, and the underside is a very light pale grey colour. Now the holly blue, this species is very widespread throughout most of the UK, but in Scotland is only known from a couple of sites. You can see it in Ayr, occasionally in Edinburgh and in parts of the Borders, but it's always associated with holly and ivy, which are the main caterpillar food plants for this species. The females have very dark tips to the wings, but in the males that's much less obvious. Now we're looking at the northern brown Argus butterfly, and this is quite a small butterfly and it looks quite dark on a dull day, but if it's a bright day you can see that it's got a beautiful iridescent sheen on the upper surfaces of the wings, and you'll also notice two white dots on the wings. It can be found in sunny areas with a plant called common rock rose. This is the main caterpillar food plant for this species. One of the places where you can find it is Holyrood Park in Edinburgh. Then this is one of our fritillary butterflies, and there are several fritillary species in Scotland, but this would be one of our most widespread. The small pearl bordered fritillary can be found anywhere where marsh violet or dog violets grow. This is especially the case on the edge of damp grasslands or edges of peat bogs. The upper surface of the wings of that species have orange and black speckles, but the undersurface has a beautiful mosaic pattern which gives this butterfly its name. Then on to two of our brown butterfly species now. We'll start with the wall. In Scotland this is mostly found in coastal areas in central Scotland, but in the south you'll find it in more inland sites. It prefers grassy places with bare ground, and you'll often see it basking upon stones or rocks. Then the large heath, very similar in appearance to the small heath, but the large heath is only slightly bigger. However, it has a much more restricted habitat because it can only be found on raised bogs in central Scotland. The caterpillars of this butterfly feed upon hairtail cottongrass, which need this habitat, so you're very unlikely to see a large heath butterfly unless you're at a raised bog. They may or may not have spots on the undersides of the wings, so that's just something to keep an eye out for. Now if you'd like any more information on the butterflies of Scotland, you can visit our website shown on the screen here, or I'd highly recommend that you download our iRecord Butterflies app. This app has a free butterfly ID guide in it, and you can use that to improve your ID skills and to record the butterflies that you see.